Hello folks, this is Karl-James Langford on channel 01 to 1975, and it's video log for December the 17th and the 18th. And today, the past 2 days have been sort of eventful, but not massively. Thursday is my day of teaching, so we'll talk about that in a sec. And we looked at the Carthaginians, so I've got all the load of images at the end that I use. And had a bit of help today. Wednesday, Tom put a load of posters up advertising the acting class that I'm going to be doing in January on Wednesdays. And I had one call in already, and I sort of got the newspapers aware of it and all the rest of it. And generally, sort of, it was one of those days that, other than going out for a few bits and pieces to get food and stuff, I got on top of housework, which can be very boring. But again, past 2 days I've been doing more decluttering and getting rid of sort of paperwork. I wanted to take a photograph of sort of my clutter, and maybe in 5 months' time compare how much crap I've got rid of. But believe me, I'm getting rid of about 5 or 6 books. I'm just using for fuel a day. I'm looking at getting rid of about 6 or 7 files of paperwork a day, you know, sort of big thick files, and loads of other stuff. And you know, what I'm finding is that I'm filtering and going through everything, and I'm basically keeping very, very little. I got rid of about 50 CADU inventories of archaeological sites. You know, 50 of them scheduled monument inventories. Just got rid of them. They really went well as fuel, because what the hell am I going to do with them? It's just clutter, getting rid of it, and it's good that I'm just getting through it. There'll come a point then I'm going to have to start looking at my video collection. But before I get rid of my video collection, I want to be able to watch some of the stuff, well, all of it, and then get a proper video recorder and start to sort of watch my old videos, get rid of some of them and keep some of them. But that's life. Nobody's going to want to buy them. It's just my way of just decluttering. That's how I do it. And there's no point keeping older stuff, because people might object to the way you do it. And I know people were not happy with the way I was getting rid of my stuff, but I'm telling you what, it's just not worth it. You know, I don't have the time to do silly stuff and, you know, take it to charities and crap. Most of the stuff is genuine crap. Anyway, so what I wanted to do, it's been a Thursday, a really busy day of teaching, looking at the Carthaginians. And I wrote something down earlier on, and this is about me, actually, this next thing. Well, these video logs are about me, but I wrote this earlier on because so many people still say to me that the reason why they never go into archaeology, the reason why they're put off by archaeology, is the archaeologists themselves. One thing, archaeologists seemingly, when they excavate, they're very unprofessional, smelly, long beards, rips in their trousers, not very nice people, very arrogant. And they say that this one person said to me the other day, she was put off archaeology, she did it at degree level, and the lecturers were so boring, it just put her off doing it. And I wrote this down. The boring academics in fact affected my archaeological career, because it's meant that people have seen me as a boring academic without even seeing me or knowing me. And it would have been great if they would have come along to my lectures and seen my work, and then I would have been able to affect them in a positive way with giving my magic effect with making the past interesting. But because other archaeologists have made archaeology so boring to them, they haven't come my way. So it's affected people's ability to approach me and come to my classes. I know that from my outreach lectures this year, my final tour of sort of lectures, to do with my book and everything else like that, I'm having people come up to me saying how wonderful my lectures are, and it's usually I've had people saying that their friends had said to them they hadn't come to my lecture because they thought the lecture was boring, and they regretted not encouraging their friends to come along because how much fun they had at my lectures. I've been telling you that people really like my lectures. And I'm going to say this, personally, this is not me being vain. I am more knowledgeable, more informative than most of those so-called professional university archaeologists, those boring outreach lectures, because they just specialise in archaeology. And then if you've got a Roman specialist, you ask them something about prehistory, and the Roman specialist is going to say, don't know the answer. You ask a Greek archaeology specialist about ancient Egypt, and they say, don't know the answer. At least I'll give it a go and just try and find the answers out there, and I'm prepared to discuss that. In other words, most archaeologists out there are a load of bollocks, uninspirational losers, and we saw a lot of that on Time Team, and I can say that. Being that I'm coming away from archaeology, most archaeologists I wouldn't give the time of day, and I wouldn't want to waste my time going to their lectures. I'm far better than that, and that's why I'm going to a different career, i.e. doing acting, because I'm people. Even though I've got my own core of students who follow me with archaeology, which is great, okay, they won't go with anybody else. They're my students, and that's brilliant. But it's a shame that so many people have been put off archaeology because archaeologists are a bunch of wasters. Toss pots, 90% of them, and I wouldn't waste my time having a conversation with most of them anyway, and I've kept myself away from them most of these years. And the casing point is this. I gave a lecture on the Carthaginians to 2 classes today, and I gave my Skype class on Tuesday. And there was an article about these Carthaginian children's burials, the time of the 300s and 200 years BC. And it said that the Romans and Greeks used to say of the Carthaginians that they used to sacrifice and murder their children to appease the gods. And I was reading an article about this, an archaeologist saying point blank, this is what the Carthaginians did. They sacrificed their children, they murdered their children to appease the gods. And you start to look at the nuances. And the children, like the archaeologists, the evidence that the archaeologists give to say that the Carthaginians murdered their children was based on the fact that the Carthaginians sacrificed animals when and cremated their remains, and then they would cremate the children's remains. And then bury them. And the point is, if they sacrifice the animals, they must have sacrificed the children. Okay, that's one level of evidence, but there's no signs of any cut marks or anything on the cremated human remains, and you would be able to find them. Okay, there's no evidence. That's the first stage, and then the second stage is that in the inscriptions on the stelae or at the Tophet burial sites, which are the burial sites specifically for the children, there would be inscriptions by the Carthaginians saying, for example, we give up this child to thank you, God, for doing this for us, and we promised we'd give up a child, or whatever. That doesn't mean to say that the child was actually sacrificed. There would have been a high mortality within the Carthaginian landscape, and we don't see large numbers of children being buried at the Tophet sites. We don't see it, but the archaeologists give us evidence that the Carthaginians sacrificed their children by the Carthaginians saying, look, you know, we give our child to appease the gods. Child may already be dead. But the archaeologists don't look logically at this, and they're so academically at their own backsides that they want to believe these stupid things. And through all my teaching of archaeology, I find that archaeologists are so warped and so strictly full of crap in their understanding and analysing archaeology that they don't take any other points of view. Another point of view with this, with archaeology, is going off on another tangent. A few years back, there was the finding of a female burial from the I think it would have been the Bronze Age. Actually, to say it again, it would have been the Iron Age. And with this female burial, they found all the tools of a metal smithy. Okay, all the tools of a metal smithy. And they found that the bones of this woman were quite chunky. But the male archaeologist writing about this burial said, oh, these metal smithing tools must have been buried with a daughter of a male blacksmith. And just because she's got heavy bones, it doesn't mean to say she was a blacksmith. And what's wrong with that is that, one, the archaeologists are ignoring the fact that the females would have been blacksmiths in the past as they are today, and the other thing, and that's very insulting to women, it's very insulting to the human race, and the if a male had been found with these blacksmithing tools, the archaeologists would have immediately said it's a blacksmithy, even though they wouldn't have analysed the bones. I think archaeology and archaeologists are mainly full of crap. They don't want to go off and understand new things, and it's out there. And to be honest with you, I'm so pleased I've taught the archaeology that I've taught over the years, because my students respect it. Okay? Back to the Carthaginians again. Wonderful race, but they fought 3 wars against the Romans. And what the Romans did with the Carthaginians, they basically nicked all their technology. And in the final defeat of their great general Hannibal, by all accounts, is one of the 10 greatest military leaders that this planet has ever seen. Taking elephants all the way from Africa, African Saharan elephants, all the way to the boats, Straits of Gibraltar, into Spain, and then marching these elephants with his army of about 30,000 men, invading Italy, taking the war to the Italians and the Romans. There was a great standoff between this great general Hannibal for about 15 years, between about 218 BC, which was the Second Punic War, and up to the Battle of Canine, and Hannibal completely defeated the Romans. And if Hannibal would have continued with his elephants, which he managed to march over the Pyrenees and the Alps, and every single one of the elephants survived, and he had assistance from the Gauls, so it was a great war, this Punic War. The Punic War, the Second Punic War, was almost as if it was a great European war. It involved the Assyrians, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Gauls, the Romans, the Carthaginians. Everybody sided on different sides. It was like one of those great conflicts. Allies of the Romans went over to Carthaginians. Loads of people were involved, loads of nations, and And then after several great, there's one story saying that the Romans weren't great sailors until they'd come across the Carthaginians, and apparently a boat washed up on the shore near Rome, and the Romans took it apart and built a galley, a trireme. Triremes are not three-oared, they're usually single-oared, so I've no idea why they're called triremes. And then eventually the Romans, what they had left, invaded Africa. Hannibal panicked, was defeated at the Battle of Zama, and by Scipio Africanus, and then Hannibal went into exile, and he died somewhere in Greece, apparently poisoned by a Roman poisoner. And then eventually by 146, after the Third Punic War, the Romans, what they did to the Carthaginians was horrific. The Romans destroyed Carthage completely. There's apparently a thick black layer across Carthage, with human bones amongst it, where people were burnt alive. Those that survived were either enslaved or slaughtered or sacrificed, and they were then forced, with boatloads of salt, probably coming from Cyprus, to salt the landscape. And even today, the landscape of Carthage, it's difficult to grow stuff because it's been so salted by the Romans, who forced the Carthaginians as slaves to do damage to their own land. And it's a sign of absolute horror that didn't leave the Carthaginians, and as a people they were wiped out. And one last thing I want to say tonight, it's been a bit of a long the Romans had no right to criticise the Carthaginians and make up stories about them, the Carthaginians sacrificing the children, because look at the Romans. In a more elite family, a wife has a baby girl, puts the baby girl in front of the husband, and if the husband doesn't want the child, he just walks away from it. If he wants the child, he picks her up, but if he walks away from it, that child has to be exposed and dies a horrible death. And that is the Roman legacy. Being an author of 2 Roman books, I can say that. Anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this video log and the archaeology history lesson, and as far as I'm concerned, most archaeologists are a bunch of tossers. So there you go. I'm sure somebody's saying that of me. Anyway, thanks folks for watching the video log. Speak to you soon.